Most clinicians don't actually have a time problem, despite the fact that they keep saying, Meghan, I don't have enough time for this. I want to talk to you about why so many people who seem like they are superhuman just operate by different rules. My name is Dr. Meghan Walker. I'm the chief cheerleader here at Clinician Business Labs, and we work with clinicians to help them build sustainable, scalable businesses. And I really understand this time management piece because I started my career as a clinician. I worked with patients for 16 years before the advent of AI and all the incredible tools that hand us back our time. See, the thing about time and time management for clinicians is that this is less about I need to create more time, and this is more about we need to think about time differently. In this video, I'm going to take you through 5 different thinking principles that are critical to hand you back the time that you need to be able to build a peaceful business. Now, there are some fundamental shifts that we are going to have to look at in order to make this work. And the first principle that I want to address is this idea that not all time is equal. Now, what I mean by this is that most to-do lists are leadership failures disguised as busyness. We treat everything in our inbox, everything on the to-do list that is so satisfying to cross off, as if each of these tasks are of equal importance. One of the first things we need to do to move out of the hustle culture of time being this linear entity and into the leadership lens that time is something that's stackable, is we have to be able to view the tasks that we are responsible for with different codes of color. Now, there are a variety of models that talk about how we can color code different tasks in our life. There are different individuals who have taken this concept and owned it. I'm not going to pretend to own it in any way, shape, or form, but there is a matrix. There is a way of thinking that I find particularly helpful at starting to learn how to address and color code the things on my to-do list. The principle that I like to look at here is something called the Eisenhower matrix. And the Eisenhower matrix works this way. When we look at any given task that we are working through, we have to be able to color code it as either urgent and important, non-urgent, or important or non-important. And what this does, and you can see here, is it creates for us a series of quadrants. And when we have these series of quadrants, and when we can look at our list and color code it according to action, suddenly we're knowing how to spend our time and where our time is most effectively deployed. So the first category of items that sit on our list are both urgent and important. And I want you to just throw on the CEO hat right now inside your business. Your job in this role is to manage all of the resources and all the tasks in front of you. So triaging these pieces quickly is part of your role. If something is both urgent and important, chances are with the size of your business, that's going to fall to you. If this is something you can do in 2 minutes or less, I want you to just get it done. So I set aside 45 minutes every morning for my urgent and important tasks. I set a timer to keep me on track, and I knock out that list of things that probably landed in my inbox overnight. Now, if something is important, but it's not urgent, let's use our inbox again as a really prime example. One of the key things that I do is I'll look at that email. Can I answer it in 2 minutes or less? Is it urgent? Is it not urgent? If it's not urgent, but it's still important, I schedule it for my non-urgent, important email time. So I've got 2 hours a week, 2 1-hour blocks where I get back into my inbox to deal specifically with those things that I've deferred. And I have different rituals around this. I don't like dealing with email. So I've got essential oils, I've got a cup of tea, I've got things that I do to make that time work better. You might do this with your charting, you might do this with other things, but not everything needs to get done in that moment. So I defer it, I schedule it for later. If something is not as important and it's not urgent, I want you to get used to labeling this as something you need to delegate. You cannot move out of the hustle culture of that early phase of your business without learning to delegate effectively. Delegation is a communication skill. Delegation is the releasing of perfectionism. Delegation is a requirement in order to scale your impact without burning out. And so even if you don't have someone to delegate to, starting to earmark things as a delegation tasks puts you into the practice of knowing how to get things off your plate. Lastly, there's a fourth category, and this one is really important. And that is, it's not urgent and it's not important. This is that thing that you keep rescheduling or keep snoozing to the following Monday because you never quite get around to it. My recommendation is that you just delete it. And no different than the 25,000 emails that are sitting in your inbox that you're never going to get to, sometimes select all delete is actually the biggest leadership flex that you can deploy. You do not have more hours in your week, but if we are going to start to move into the realm where we are stacking these pieces, you're going to have to get used to categorizing the tasks in front of you and definitely getting rid of the ones that don't work. Okay, principle number 2 is something that I call Econ 101 for clinicians. And here's what we're going to do. We are actually going to control demand in your practice by limiting supply. Here's one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing with clinicians is people share they have no time to grow their business. They have no time to they have no time to post on social media. And when I go and I look at their calendar, they have massive blocks of time that are reserved for patients, but they don't necessarily have a calendar full of patient appointments. This is where I talk about Econ 101 for clinicians, and it's one of the biggest mistakes we make right out of school. It is intuitive to us that we think if we want to have more clients and we want to be service focused, that we open up our calendar to maximize our availability. But one of the things this does, and it flies in the face of Economics 101, is that when we do that, we are flooding our calendars with supply, but we have very little demand. If you want to have a full calendar, you can control this, but you have to control it by limiting the supply of your time. So this idea that we're going to grow our practice by joining 3 different clinics and having our schedule fully open at all of these different places to maximize our ability to catch new patients, it's not fishing. It doesn't work that way. Consumers look to various clues to decide whether or not they want to work with someone. One of the ways that they will start to look at you and assess whether or not you have the authority and the expertise to help them with something as sacred as their health is they're going to look to your calendar. If your calendar is wide open and it's full of places where they can book, then they are going to assume you aren't busy, and they're going to fill in the story that you aren't busy for a reason. If you want to create the time to work on your business, we need to first control the supply and demand curve of your strategy. And that means shrinking the availability of your calendar. When you shrink the availability of your calendar and you limit supply, you now control that demand curve. It gives you flexibility with respect to your pricing, and it opens up your calendar to what you probably should be working on, which is the growth inside your business. If you are new to practice and still trying to build your flow of patients coming in, have a look at your calendar and make sure it is really tightly controlled. If you are the clinic owner trying to fill the calendars of your newer associates, please ensure that they are not flooding the economy with supply when what we're really trying to do up front is have demand. When we can control the calendar in this way, we can control the economics of their practice. But most importantly, we open your calendar up to something really important at this phase of growing your business, and that is working on your business, not in it. Principle number 3 is this idea that you are not managing time. You are, in fact, managing your energy. And we know this because we talk about this with patients all the time. But when it comes to circling back inside our own business, this is where we tend to make a few different mistakes. So if we're going to talk about this idea of managing our energy and leveraging it as a currency inside our business, there's a few tactical things that we can actually do to address this piece. The first thing I want you to have a look at is energy matching. So I know for me that my most creative time of the day is actually in the morning. This is a terrible time for me to take meetings. It's a terrible time for me to be sitting inside my inbox. This is where I need to be ideating and building my business forward. So I want to make sure that the way that I have outlined the tasks that I do in my calendar match where my energy is best aligned in order to get those pieces done. So this can be something that is true for you in terms of working for patients. It can be true for you in terms of creating content or writing inside your business. But how you manage your energy is paramount to how you manage your calendar. The second piece, and this is going to sound really basic, and some of you do this well, and some of you just straight up ignore it, is batching your tasks. Remember when I was talking about the Eisenhower matrix and how we defer things or how we schedule them for later? I have a color-coded calendar that enables me to put different types of tasks in very specific times. I have very specific times of the week where I want to start to review the finances in my business. I have very specific times where I want to start to create content. I don't want to create content on a Monday morning. I want to do it on a Friday afternoon where I have total flexibility on the backside. So when we start to look at batching tasks, not only does it create logical efficiency, but it should also fall back on rule number 1, which is matching your energetic state. When we start to put these pieces together, this is how we start to stack time and not always look at it as this linear entity. The third piece that's really important, and I'm not going to lie, this is still a work in progress for me, is understanding and appreciating that relaxing and recharging is actually part of my job. So in my 40 hours of work during any given week, one of the things I actually now block off is blank space. Blank space to go to the gym and maybe not even work out, but just sit in the massage chair. Blank space to go for a walk with my dog. Blank space to just wander around the city. Blank space to sit and read a book. So when I was in a phase of my career where I did need to hustle harder in order to get into that state of momentum, I realized early on that I needed to relax. And that's how I leveraged my weekends. I put boundaries around that. But as I stepped into a new era of my business, I started to realize that within the traditional working week, I needed to factor in different times to be able to recover as well. Now, as a practitioner, you'll fully understand this. In fact, you might even prescribe this kind of advice to your patients. But I also know for you in your own business, you probably hit a bit of tension here when it comes to scheduling in relax and recovery time and viewing it as part of your job. This is one of the things I want you to start to play with, that if we're going to manage your time effectively and we're going to manage your energy effectively, that we are scheduling in time for you to have blank space to think about and be non-reactive when it comes to your business. Principle number 4, schedule growth or accept stagnation. Here's what happens when I get on a call with people and we are talking about one of our programs. And you might right now have one of these questions about some of our programs. And the number one question I get is, Meghan, how much time is this going to take? I don't have a ton of time during my week. And I always find this really fascinating because there's a few different angles that we can take in terms of addressing this piece. But where I have landed is this. If you were to come into, I'll use our program Growth Lab as an example. So in terms of an absolute time commitment, we have a 1-hour call once a week where we share principles and tactics and strategies to add leverage into your practice. Now, from that 1-hour call, I want to make sure that what we are doing for practitioners is adding clarity and strategy and action steps for them in what I assume is designated growth time within their business. You see, way back in the day when I was first stepping into entrepreneurship as an early, we're not talking dates here, as an early clinician, I read a book called The E-Myth. And one of the biggest takeaways I took from this book is that it's going to be a challenge for you if you're constantly working in your business, meaning seeing patients back to back, and you don't actually create time to work on your business. And so before I ever got caught in the trap of scheduling 40 hours worth of patient visits during a week, I created designated time that was specifically focused on the growth of my practice. And so when people are asking about our programming, what I want to be able to do is give you strategic direction that you can use in that designated growth phase of your business. It will be impossible for you to work on your business, for you to earn more, for you to have more impact, for you to have the time freedom, all the buzzwords that we hear in the realm of entrepreneurship, if you have not scheduled time to grow your business, to work on your business. This is an absolute imperative in terms of time and energy management. Shrink the supply of time, right back to principle number 1, and expand the amount of time that you use to grow your business. As your business expands, expect that your scheduled growth time will expand alongside it. Principle number 5. Now, this is a biggie. It's going to open a can of worms, but I promised you that I was going to share with you content that would change your life, not necessarily just your day or your physiological state. And here's the real deal. If you want To change your relationship with time, you have to exit the time for money model. When you sell your time as the essential commodity inside your business, you are placing yourself in the model of hustle forever. You might as well put up your hand and say, I am choosing to be stuck in hustle for the rest of my career because I also choose to trade my time for money. I want you to know, because some of you are asking, if I'm not selling my time, if I'm not selling a 30-minute follow-up or a 60-minute intake, what am I actually selling, Meghan? You're selling something infinitely more valuable. You are literally selling your education and capacity short if you are caught in the time for money trap. What you really are selling, and what will open the door for you, is to transition from selling time to selling your strategy. When you sell strategy, what you are selling is a roadmap. When I sell time and I run a trail in a forest, I could say you have 45 minutes to go and play in the forest. But the other way that I could sell the experience is I could say you have unlimited time in the forest. Here is your roadmap. Here's what you can expect to see. Here's the transformation that will take place for you on a physical and emotional level. Here's what you have to pack for the journey. Here's how by the time you finish walking my trail, you will never be the same. See, this is the difference between trading your time for money and delivering a transformation. This requires a different lens. This requires that we take space in our calendar to work on our business, not in our business. This requires that we pause and in some cases extinguish the way of thinking that was taught to us in school. But moving away from the time for money model means that now you're adding true leverage to your business. Time is one of those things that as you move through life, it will become more valuable because you have less of it. You will not become less busy when your kid goes off to kindergarten. Time will just change color. You will not be less busy when your kids enter high school. You were just going to trade tying shoes to talking about relationship dynamics. You're not going to become less busy when your kids leave for university and you're now caring for aging parents. Time and the demands on it are only going to increase. We need to learn to leverage what we do and how we impact people early in our career when the time piece is more abundant. Because one of the things we realize is that this is a depleting resource. And when we don't manage it effectively, when we don't place this lens on it early on in our career, we become resentful. We become panicked. We become caught in a paradigm and way of thinking that ultimately doesn't serve our business. We help people move from the time for money model by teaching them something really simple. We call it a signature care system. This is a methodology for practice. You already have one. You probably just haven't executed on it. If you want to understand how we can build a signature care system, how we can move away from having an endlessly supplied calendar of time, how we can move you into a leveraged model of practice, I want you to consider checking out some of the resources below. We've got tools that are going to help you triage where you are at in your business. We're going to have tools that are going to be able to help you understand where you are spending your time and how we can start to shift this model into an era of your practice where you have leverage, financial and time freedom, and away from that endless hustle culture that essentially and forever digs us into a hole. There are so many ways that we can save time and change your relationship with time and practice. And while this video was all about different thinking tools to be able to do it, I want to address the really big elephant in the room, which is how do I leverage AI to hand me back our time? See, one of the reasons I didn't include this as one of the core principles is because if you don't know how to think about time, adding AI into your practice, frankly, is just one more thing to do. But if you are interested in pairing a way of thinking about time with the tools of 2026 that are available to us to be able to create efficiency with what it is that we're doing, we've got some pretty incredible things coming up throughout the course of January. One of them being our free Biz Lab taking place at the end of the month. During this 3-hour training, not only are we going to show you how to address clinical excellence through really compelling AI tools, but we're going to equally show you all of our favorite tools and all of our favorite prompt designs in order to save you endless hours in practice. So if you're committed to thinking about time differently and you want to know the tools that can take this to an exponential level, check out our January Biz Lab below.